welcome to One Question with Pastor Adam. I am so glad that you are here. This is the first episode of 2025. We made it, people. We made it. And congratulations to you for making it through 2024. And so far, it's January 10th. And here we are together. Better than ever. Let's make it a good one, okay? So I'm telling you that because my dog Mac is right here laying down, and I hit the button to start the show, and Mac went grrr. So I don't know what's going on with Mac. He's just like protesting right at the beginning. He wants some attention. Anyway, he'll get some attention later. What am I talking about? I don't know. This is One Question with Pastor Adam, and I am pastor to believers and to doubters, to unfaithful Christians and to faithful atheists. Cliff is here. Good afternoon to you, Cliff. Good to see you as always, my friend. Today, we have a special episode with a special guest. Cliff, you are being so nice to Mac. Cliff says, "Hello, Mac." That's all Cliff. That's all Mac needs is just a little hello. And Mac got us off to a good start because today we're going to talk about Wicked. And here's the question. Are you ready? Are people born wicked? Is Mac born wicked, or does he just have wickedness thrust upon him when I start the show? Oh, here we are. Riley, hello to you. So we are going to talk about Wicked today with one of my best friends in the entire world, Suzanne Ross. Riley's Mac, you're getting all the attention today. Everybody loves you, Mac. So we're going to talk with Suzanne Ross today about her book, The Wicked Truth: When Good People Do Bad Things. That is quite a title. And we're going to talk about that in part because Suzanne's book is awesome. And also the ebook is coming out. So we're going to talk about Wicked. So I'm going to bring Suzanne up here in a second. If you have comments or questions about Wicked, put those in the chat section and we will bring you in. And I've said Mac's name so many times. He is over here wanting some attention. So there he is. Everybody said, "Oh, Mac, yeah." So if you're listening on the podcast, everybody just saw Mac, who's an adorable dog. I was going to say the cutest dog ever, but I'm not mimetic or competitive. So here we go. Melanie, hello to you. Princess, hello. And here comes Suzanne. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Adam. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's the first show of 2025, so I'm so glad to be able to share it with you. So thank you for being here.
I didn't realize I was kicking off the year with you, so that's great.
Here we go. Here we go. Friends, I have known Suzanne for what, 18 years, 20 years. It's been
Yeah.
it's been a long time, and Suzanne is one of my favorite people in the world, and so it's always great to be with Suzanne and talk about amazing topics like Wicked. And Suzanne wrote this book, as I mentioned earlier, The Wicked Truth: When Good People Do Bad Things. And Suzanne, I just want to kind of start off by asking you, what was it about Wicked when you saw the musical that just like had you so excited that you wanted to write a book about it?
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. I might begin to answer that question by telling you why I didn't want to see the musical. I went very reluctantly because I was a big fan of the 1939 musical movie with Judy Garland. I know you're familiar with that.
I've seen that a few times, yes.
You've seen it a few times, and I know lots of people are familiar with it. When I was growing up, um, before the days when you could watch whatever you wanted on demand, um, the Wizard of Oz movie was shown, like, over the holidays. I think it was around Thanksgiving or something, and everybody just stopped and watched it, and the next day was just the topic of conversation. So everybody loved that movie, and I mean, for a lot of different reasons. And one of them is kind of a comment that Glinda makes in the opening song of the musical when she says, "Isn't it nice to know that good will conquer evil?"
Yeah.
And that's kind of the theme of the movie, really. Everyone says it's about There's no place like home. I don't think that's really what the movie's about. It's about finding, um, what you think you don't have,
Mm,
and then finding you had it all along, and looking at what you did to get what you already had. I mean, that's the tragedy of the movie, weirdly. Um, but I didn't see it that way when the musical first came out. I loved the movie and I didn't want to have it spoiled. I didn't want to hear the Wicked Witch's story. Because, the promo for the Broadway show was, um, so much happened before Dorothy dropped in. And I was like, "I don't care. I
mm,
all I care about is that she defeated the Wicked Witch and everyone is happy
yeah.
now." So when I went to see the show, I needed something to take my parents to when they were visiting, quite honestly, and it was in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And so we went to see it, and my husband Keith and I were there. I got really good seats, so we were right up close, And the opening words of the musical are the lyrics from the song "No One Mourns the Wicked," and the very first words are, "Good news, she's dead." Now, Adam, you and I have walked a long journey together, and it has been a journey of exploring scripture and
Uh-huh.
trying to understand what is the good news, after all, that we're preaching. And when I heard that phrase, "Good news, she's dead," I was like, "Wait a minute. I could write a book about that, first of all," and I did, but there's much more in the musical than that. But good news, of course, the good news of the gospel is he lives,
Mm.
right? Good news, he lives, and he's not mad at us. So, um,
All right, all right. I gotta stop you there.
yeah,
Good news, he lives and he's not mad at us.
yeah.
Can you flesh that out for us a little bit? That's the gospel according to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, according to Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, right? Because when Jesus comes back after the resurrection and has these resurrection appearances, what does he tell his disciples to do? He gives them a commission
Mhm.
to go out and preach the gospel. But when they do the gospel, what does it look like? Feeding the hungry, preaching good news to the people in prison, opening the doors, taking care of one another. And the gospel is one of forgiveness. They're
Mm,
given the power to forgive,
mm.
which is what Jesus brought to us. The resurrection reassures us um, that before we even know that we were on this weird, tragic journey to get things we already had, and we hurt people along the way because we felt justified, to even acknowledge that, we have to know we're in a safe place,
Yes.
that we're already forgiven. That's okay to admit that. No one's going to punish you or condemn you to eternal damnation if you admit that, you killed a woman in her home because you thought you didn't know how to get home, but you
Mm,
really did.
mm, mm.
So how do you admit that if you
Yeah,
haven't you already know you're forgiven? So
yeah.
that's, I guess, what I'm referring to there.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Yeah. Kenton, hello. It's good to see you. Kenton says, when I was 9, I was in the production of The Wizard of Oz. What role did I play? Kenton, I'm going to guess Oz. Oz the Great, because Kenton, you are great. But let me know if I got that one wrong. Jessica says, offers some advice. Maybe write a book. Good news, she's dead.
Yeah,
Uh, and then we can subvert the whole thing. But you do that in the book already, so
yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, the whole setup is good news.
yeah,
Does wicked? The question is, are people born wicked, or does wickedness get thrust upon you? And this, as you do in your book, relates to Jesus, who has wickedness thrust upon him.
Mm,
Jesus needs to become the scapegoat of the people,
yeah.
right? And they unite against him and kill him. Elphaba needs to, and the animals are the scapegoat of the people, and they unite against Elphaba and the animals. So there are a lot of connections here to the Christian story that are very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things to remember is that that song, "No One Mourns the Wicked," is that, when Jesus, was killed, between Good Friday and the resurrection, there were a lot of people celebrating his death, and even afterwards, right? I mean, the Gospels, I always forget, I think it's Luke. Luke has it where Herod and Pilate become friends, because Jesus was viewed by the powers that be at the time, as a threat to their power and as a troublemaker and a rabble rouser. And he's, going to lead people to think that they don't that they deserve more than they have, and um, that a true king would look a little different than the king that they're living under. And so they had to get rid of them to keep the peace. And I think that's one thing that's really important, that we have to remember, that the story of the Gospels isn't told from Herod's point of view or Pilate's point of view. If it was, they would have said, "Great job, we got rid of that troublemaker and we kept the peace
Mhm.
at Passover." The Roman soldiers didn't come in and, you know, do whatever they did, which was not ever pleasant,
Slaughter us. Yeah.
slaughter us. We kept the peace. Yay.
Mhm. Oh no. Hopefully, Suzanne will join us back. So we kept the peace, yay, by creating a enemy, which turned out to be Jesus. So you see how this works out in the play, and hopefully Suzanne will be able to come back. If not, we'll talk about it amongst ourselves. So Cliff says, "I'm seeing a lot of good news. She's dead on FB." Let's see about Anita Bryant passing, but I still see it as sad. Don't forget forgiveness. She reaped what she sowed and suffered too. Uh, why can't I? Why don't I know who Anita Bryant was? I This is not great. Oh, Cliff is rejoicing. Yeah, every time a mistake is made or something bad happens, we rejoice. So nice rejoicing in the chat section. Kenton, by the way, was not Oz. Kenton was Toto, the dog. Thank you for that, Kenton. So uh, let's see. Hopefully, Suzanne will come back soon. I'll keep my. Suzanne says, not sure what to do. So I'll invite her to click on the link again. And we'll see if she comes back. So let's see. I'm gonna ask you, if you're watching the live show, have you seen the movie? Have you seen the play, Wicked? Oh, here comes Suzanne. But yeah, you can answer that question in the chat section. And what did you make of it? Were there any scenes that like popped out to you as being significant as you watch the movie or watch the play? You can put that in the chat section and we'll bring it in. But fortunately, we have Suzanne Ross back with us. Oh, let's see. Suzanne, we lost Suzanne again. So who knows what's happening? Okay, here we're gonna try it again. Question for Suzanne: how Gerardian is the book? Can I share it with folks who don't get Gerard? That's a great question. Okay, Suzanne, we're gonna try this one more time. Well, we'll try it many times, however many times we need to. So, welcome back, Suzanne.
Thank you.
having some technical difficulties. When we do online worship at the church, whenever there are technical difficulties, I invite people to type rejoice in the chat section. So we are rejoicing many times. So that's fun.
That's great.
Angela says the most exciting live stream. So
Okay, good. Yeah,
because we
for
are
me too.
rejoicing.
Yeah.
We are rejoicing. So Suzanne,
Yeah.
we left off somewhere. Um, any I can't remember. This is
What
how it
were
goes.
we saying? I don't know.
All right. Well, let's get into Kenton's question.
Sure.
Kenton, thank you for this. Kenton asks how Gerardian is the book,
Yeah.
and can I share it with folks who don't get Gerard? This is a great question, Kenton. This season, we're trying to dive into mimetic theory a little deeper, and so Suzanne's book I, is very Gerardian. But Suzanne, I'll let you go ahead and
Yes.
answer the question, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Kenton. I actually wrote it with the idea that it would be an introduction to mimetic theory for folks who hadn't yet been exposed to it. And I thought using the story of the musical Wicked would be a nice, easy way to be illustrating the ideas as I went along. So I talk a lot about myth and mythological and sacrificial stories and how those get um, unwound basically by hearing the voice of the wicked, by
Mm.
listening and learning how to mourn every death, even the death of a wicked witch. So it is intended as an intro to mimetic theory. So I do hope it works that way.
Yeah, good. Cliff is bringing up a modern example, and I didn't know this person's name. Cliff says, I'm seeing a lot of good news. She's dead on Facebook about Anita Bryant passing, but I still see it as sad. Don't forget forgiveness. She reaped what she sowed and suffered. I wasn't sure who Anita Bryant was,
Okay.
but Cliff, Suzanne, you know who Anita Bryant was.
Mhm.
She led a personal campaign against gay rights in the 70s and got protections repealed in Florida for a time. So I don't know if you have any thoughts. I saw your head nodding, Suzanne, as I brought up Anita Bryant's name. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about it or.
Yeah, that's an interesting mm, contemporary modern example of how we do tend to celebrate um, when we think people who are wrong or hurtful to others get what they deserve. She died of cancer, I think. I don't know, but she was. It wasn't called canceled at the time, but she was canceled in the 70s and 80s because of her campaigns against gay rights, and she was part of a group, I think, that was supporting that conversion therapy stuff. And so it does make you grimace. It wasn't pleasant. But what's really hard about being a Christian is that we can't even celebrate um, not just Anita Bryant's death, but her life. We cannot say, well, good, she got canceled. She deserved it. We always are called to find a way to hold even our enemies in a place of love, meaning that our prayers are for them to find whatever it is that will bring them joy and love and a fulfilled life. We don't we don't pray for them to come to harm. That's just not what Jesus taught us to do. So it's a good example, and it can be very hard, especially in the times we live in where everyone is supposed to be taking sides, and you have to signal your righteousness by which side you're on and who you're against and who you're you know hoping um, gets what they deserve. So it's a tough time to be a Christian, I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Thank you for speaking that truth. I did put a link to The Wicked Truth in the chat section. It's there on
Mhm.
Amazon, so hopefully you'll be able to see that link there. So Angela says, where we left off, getting rid of the troublemaker in time for
Oh,
Passover.
right. Oh, thank you, and that's Angela. Thank you, Angela. Someone's paying attention and didn't panic when the screen went
Right.
down.
Yes.
I lost my whole train of thought. But yes, we were talking about the fact that if the Gospels was according to Herod or to Pilate, it would be a very different story. It would be a celebratory story that Jesus died. And what's weird about the way we tend to teach and preach about Jesus' death is sometimes we do talk about it as triumphant, um, that Jesus' death was necessary, that God wanted it, and so it was a victory. And in a way, it is a victory over death. But one of the things that tangled me up when I was younger about the that way of talking about it was that if Jesus was supposed to die and God needed him to die, then isn't Judas like the hero of the story? Like, why is Judas the bad guy? He just did what needed doing. Someone had to make sure Jesus was killed, and Judas did it. Now, that tangled me up, as a young person and a teenager, and I didn't know what to do with Judas, and I
Mm,
didn't know what to do with this necessity of the death. And whether it was something I should grieve, like on Good Friday, we grieve that Jesus died. But if he had to die and God wanted it, why are we grieving? You know what I mean? It was just a bit of a tangle. So I think that gets brought up with in the musical when we are told Elphaba's story. So for
mhm.
those who I'm assuming people are on because this listening in because they've seen the musical and
Oh, we're having spoilers all over the place in this
yeah,
episode. So if
exactly.
you
And
care, you can shut down the episode. You can stop listening, go see it, and then come back and
yeah,
continue listening. But yeah, so spoilers
well,
are full.
spoilers and we're not explaining anything. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just, the Wicked Witch of the Judy Garland movie has a name in this one. And it's her story, we are told, not Dorothy's story,
Right.
right? So that's the same as if Dorothy would be like Herod telling the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But now we're getting Elphaba's story, which is like the Gospels. We're hearing the story of the one who was considered wicked and whose death was necessary to keep the peace. That's not God's position.
Mm,
That's the position of the powers and principalities and people who and I don't wanna demonize them either. The people in positions of authority have a lot of responsibility to keep the peace. The problem is they live within a, system that tells them that in order to keep the peace, you need it's okay to, sacrifice a few folks. A little bit of violence, if it prevents a bigger outbreak of violence, you got that formula right. And so they're living within this formula, which is in Girardian terms, either it's a mythological formula or the sacrificial formula, which allows you to justify violence in the name of peace, which is just should sound paradoxical to our ears. If it doesn't, read the
hmm.
Gospels some more.
Yep. Yep.
It should sound like a contradiction. And so when we hear Elphaba's story, then in Wicked, and this is why I didn't want to go to the musical, it messed up my ability to find joy and comfort and even a sense of goodness
Yeah.
in the defeat of the witch, because I knew where wickedness was. It was over there in that person that has green skin and wears a pointy black hat, nothing like me. I can't fly around on a broomstick, so I'm not wicked. I must be the good guy. I'm like Dorothy. Yeah, I'm the good guy. And so that way of knowing our goodness is a trap and allows violence to be continued in the name of peace. Even though we say we all long for peace, if we establish our goodness by having to make someone else wicked, by thrusting wickedness upon
Mhm.
them,
Mhm.
then that's the formula for violence to perpetuate ad infinitum.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
never get out of it.
I, am reminded of a scene, uh, in Wicked where, so the mimetic impulse is often to join the crowd in uniting against the wicked enemy.
Mhm.
It's a non-conscious, uh, mimesis, imitation. In the movie, there's this beautiful scene where they're at, and in the play too, where they're at a party, and Elphaba and Glinda are not friends yet. They don't start off. They start off with antagonism between them, and then a friendship emerges between them, and
Mhm.
it's largely because of a point of. Usually, Gerardians talk about, well, mimesis is associated with scapegoating, negativity,
Mm.
um, and it's often framed in that way. But there's a positive mimesis that is clearly shown in this scene,
Yeah.
and I just found it very profound because Glinda is the person in power uh, at
Yes.
when this scene starts, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And she has set it up now. I don't remember the sequence exactly now, but she sets it up so that um, she sets up a way that Elphaba is going to be humiliated at this dance.
This is where she gets the hat, the
Yes.
pointy hat. So Glinda gets this hat from her grandma or someone, and she hates it. It's not Glinda's style. So she gives it to Elphaba to shame her when she goes to the dance. Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, and she does it in front of her friends. Notice that that's how Glinda maintains her position as, the top, what do you call it in a clique? Whoever the leader of a clique is, she's the a alpha girl.
Mm.
And she shows that she knows how to humiliate others. That's her gift. And Alphaba doesn't belong to their clique. She never will. And so she sets it up so Elphaba will be humiliated at the dance. But then she finds out that Elphaba did an act of kindness to her because Elphaba thought Glinda had performed an act of kindness for Elphaba's sister. So I think what's really interesting there is it's a mistake.
Mm,
Glinda wasn't actually kind to Nessa Rose when she asked Bach to take her to the dance,
that's right.
but Elphaba thought it was an act of kindness. And I love that little bit there because um, in the way mimesis works, the way imitation works, is we often pick up a cue and it's not accurate. Like we
Mm,
interpret something as either positive or negative, and it leads somewhere. Like I know how many times, especially as a teenager in high school, I interpreted someone's glance at me as judgmental and negative. And just quick, and then I thought, "They don't like me," and then I don't like them. Did I even ask? Were they even looking at me? Was it somewhere else? So we don't realize how quick and fast and unconscious these, interactions are. And so I thought it was absolutely brilliant that the whole sequence that leads to the most loving act then in the first act, really, um, is a mistake. I just love it.
Mm,
So then this loving act is Glinda feels now ashamed of what she did, and so she uses her power for good, right? Remember
mm,
that? Then she goes over and stands next to Elphaba, and just her presence there physically next to her causes everyone to rethink how they're gonna relate to Elphaba.
mm, mm.
Linda uses her power for good. It's just gorgeous.
It's a powerful moment, yeah. Princess says, "I saw the musical too many times, 12, and my mother passed away while I was listening to the soundtrack. No One Mourns the Wicked was
Oh,
playing when she passed."
oh,
A lot of us have troubled relationships with, parents and other
yeah,
people very close to us, and, so Princess, that's, I know, it's a
wow.
powerful moment for you there, my friend, so, um let's see. Jessica says, "The movie was my first time seeing the story of Wicked. I loved it. So many things stuck out. When they take Dr. Dilliman from the classroom, I think I gasped. It was so upsetting."
Mhm.
I
Go
wanna
ahead.
I wanna if I'd like to talk a little bit more about Dr. Dilliman too. Also, how charming and personable and fanciful the wizard was. Jeff Goldblum, was so well cast because people tend to love him, and in real life, I think people would be very resistant to accept if he was orchestrating an evil plot like the wizard. It says a lot about our struggles as humans to see people as they really are, good and bad, yada, yada, yada.
Mhm. Mhm.
Any thoughts on that, Suzanne? The Dr. Dillamond, I know you read
Yeah,
a lot about in the book,
yes.
and also Jeff Goldblum is that Wizard of Oz character.
I know, I enjoyed that casting very much too. It was quite hilarious. Um, but yeah, Dr. Dillamond, um, what I love about it is that we are given a talking goat who gives a lecture about being a scapegoat.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, that's a bit obvious.
Uh-huh.
And you'd be surprised how many people miss it, that this is actually a show about scapegoating. And that the one disappointment I had with the movie was that there's a line in the stage version that I was waiting for Dr. Dilliman to say, and he
Mm,
didn't say it. And in the stage version, Dr. Dilliman asks, "Does anyone know what is meant by the term scapegoat?"
mm.
And he doesn't say it, and the word scapegoat wasn't uttered in that scene, and I found that disappointing.
Yeah.
Um, just because my book is about scapegoating, and I was waiting for that. But it's weird how hard it is to see scapegoating because, as you know, Adam, in one of the mm, biggest insights in mimetic theory is that to have a scapegoat is not to know you have one. So if you know you have a scapegoat, you don't have them anymore because our scapegoats don't look like scapegoats to us.
Mm,
They look like wicked witches. They look like people who deserve what they get, who need to be canceled, who can be bombed and exiled and
yeah.
kept out at the border, and these are the people that appear as if they are the wickedest witch in the world. The problem is, and I must say up front, evil exists. I'm not saying there aren't people out there who want to do us harm. What I'm saying is you're most at risk of scapegoating when you think you're absolutely sure where the evil is.
Mm,
That's the biggest risk. And that's the risk that is my example of saying I didn't wanna see the stage play. 'cause I didn't wanna hear a story that
Yeah.
messed with my scapegoat, the Wicked Witch.
Mhm.
I didn't wanna hear it, and we all resist that because it messes with our sense of ourselves as good, and we need to know we're good so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're so desperate to know we're good and loved and on the right side and doing what is good in the world and what God wants us to do, that we sometimes cling to these stories of false differences and false wickedness. And so, learning I think when you feel resistance to hearing someone's story, that's the story you should listen to,
Mm. Mm.
because that's the sign that you're gonna lose something that's important to you, some way you've known you were good and right and just and true, and you may have to let go of that story to be truly good,
Yeah.
right, and just.
Kenton says he just bought 4 copies. So
Attention! Yay!
so that's awesome. I love the way you put it. How did you put it? There is evil in the world. You're not saying that there's not evil in the
No,
world.
no,
There are people who want to do us harm.
yeah.
What do we do with that knowledge if we want to avoid scapegoating them
Mhm.
or what do we do with that?
Well, I think it's just we have to be sure that we are on the right track. Like, if you think someone's gonna do you harm, don't take someone else's word for it. We have
Mm,
to investigate these things completely, truly. I mean, an example is, are gay people gonna ruin the institution of marriage? Are they a threat to family life? Let's investigate that before we decide that gay people are the cause of all our problems. I think, in a similar way, um, I mean, heterosexual marriages, aren't doing that well. And is it because of gay people? Or is there some other thing that maybe we need to hold ourselves accountable for and responsible for? I mean, it's very similar to me with the whole, um, conflict, or I don't know. It's a just a round of, trying to make sense of, um, oh, what is it called now? The, that kind of Christianity that everyone's
Christian nationalism?
Christian
Okay,
nationalism.
there we go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Christian nationalism. Oh my God, it's the reason Christianity is failing and falling apart and whatever, and God and nation conflated, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe that's not a great idea. But I realized that I went to church for a long time with an American flag up there on the altar. I was It was in the '50s that they added "One Nation Under God" to
Mhm,
the Pledge of Allegiance. That wasn't about Christian nationalists didn't do that. I mean, so you just have to start to ask questions.
mhm.
Don't take these narratives, especially blanket narratives like that. Like,
Yes.
"I know the cause of the problem, it's over there, and I have nothing to do with it."
It's all the talking animals. They're the cause of all of our problems, right?
Yes, and
Yeah.
as soon as you begin to let yourself off the hook and you have no responsibility, you can be pretty sure that maybe the source of that you have not pinpointed a source of evil.
Yeah, it's I keep trying to remind myself, I think it was Naomi Klein who wrote a book that, put this so succinctly before me, which was, don't get caught up in what you are against. If it's
Mhm.
Christian nationalism or whatever, there is a prophetic critique from inside Christianity that I think is important to make towards Christian nationalism. But don't get caught up in that because it will distract you from what you are for, right?
Yes.
Which is which is living the gospel. So you can get so caught up. This is where mimetic theory is so helpful. Whereas Elphaba and Glinda become friends and close
Mhm,
through mimesis, right?
mhm.
Uh, they begin to like the popular, right?
Yeah.
Uh, right. She wants to teach, Glinda wants to teach Elphaba how to become popular. Elphaba doesn't go for it for very long, but they become like, begin to look like each other a little bit there, right? And the same thing can happen in a positive way, whereas that's a positive way. Same thing can happen in a negative way,
Yeah.
where if you give too much attention to Christian nationalism,
Mhm.
you may start using at least their methods
Yeah.
in order to attack them. So if Christian nationalism is all about trying to gain power for themselves to wield against others, when you're against that, there's a danger in trying to gain all this power for
Mhm.
ourselves to wield against them.
Yes.
Right. So there's like, that's where Gerard talks about the enemy twins.
Yes. Yeah, and the way the movie ends is the end of the first act, which is Elphaba becoming the twin of the wizard.
Mm,
Okay, so she wanted to be like the wizard because he was good and he was gonna help her no longer be an outcast, and then he was gonna help the animals, and she would just get to him. He would be the savior, the hero.
yeah.
And it turns out he was the cause of the problem with the animals. He's the one. And she gets so disillusioned and brokenhearted
Mm,
that instead of now she decides she is going to bring the wizard down, right?
yes.
And so they end up in a very bitter rivalry, a power struggle of who's going to defeat the other. And she becomes the twin of the wizard. When she says, I'm going to defy gravity,
Mm,
it means she's no longer going to be constrained in what she can do to bring down the wizard. Now, her ends are noble. She
yeah.
wants to help the animals.
Good. Good.
The wizard, his ends aren't noble, we can say,
Yeah.
right? However, Alphaba, as you're pointing out, is using the same methods as the wizard. And if you use violence, it you become a violent person. And how can you that's why the subtitle of my book is When Good People Do Bad Things.
Yes.
I don't think Alphaba suddenly becomes a bad person when she decides she's gonna, get the wizard and do whatever it takes. Um, but she has taken up the methods, of wickedness. That's
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Jessica says Glinda ends up taking on Elphaba's style too. If you look at the dress she's wearing when she goes with Elphaba to Oz. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good pickup there, Jessica. Good, good. Cliff says I'm gonna have to break down and see the movie, see the show. So, all right, Cliff, here we go.
And
Yeah,
really, if the musical, the stage show is in your town, I think it's still touring. Uh,
yeah,
Definitely see it.
yeah.
It's worth it.
I'm as you're talking about Elphaba, a great modern example that I am seeing in this is I've talked about him frequently on the show, especially lately. This is going to be my year of Dietrich Bonhoeffer as
Mm,
well.
mm,
I said that when Trump first became president. I'm going to get into Bonhoeffer, and now I have my second chance because I didn't do it the first time. So Bonhoeffer takes this evil upon himself. He knows
yeah.
what he is doing when Bonhoeffer is one of the most of the pastors in Nazi Germany end up supporting the Nazis uh,
Mhm,
and uniting and scapegoating against the Jews and other minority groups.
mm,
Bonhoeffer doesn't get caught up in that and tries to be nonviolent all the way through until he realizes I got to take this sin upon myself and try to assassinate Hitler. So there he sees, this is what I appreciate about him so much, is that he's a good guy, in my view, in part because he realizes that what he is going to do is, in his view, sinful.
Mhm.
A lot of theologians, well, a lot of I don't want to call them theologians. A lot of popular writers who
Mm.
write about Bonhoeffer end up saying that Bonhoeffer thought he was doing the will of God in trying to assassinate
Ah,
Hitler. He
yeah.
That's not it. That's not the move that Bonhoeffer makes.
No.
And so in trying to kill, the Oz Hitler, the Oz character in this scenario, right?
Mhm.
He says that he needs to fall on the mercy of God's arms as he
Mhm.
does this sinful act. And to me, that when it comes to Christianity and violence, no one mourns the wicked. All of it, whenever Christians feel the need to be violent, whether it's true or not, uh, that's something not to celebrate, but to mourn.
Correct. Absolutely. Always mourn the wicked. Absolutely.
It's when Jesus says, to his disciples, "Put the sword back in its place, for all who live by the sword die by the sword." It's a like when Christians end up picking up the sword for whatever reason, it's a rejection of Jesus' clear teaching, and that's when we need to, whether it's justified or not,
Yeah.
however we justify it, fall on the mercies of God's arms, like
Yeah.
Paul does.
Yeah. I think that's what's called, I think when soldiers come back from combat, they suffer what's called moral injury.
Hmm.
And I think that's a lot of that. They're put in a situation by their leaders, by political leaders who decide that this violence is necessary, and they are taken on, and in the act of taking it on, they see the horror of it. I mean,
Hmm.
in the book, I think I mentioned this, my dad was inducted into, World War II, and they asked him, would he kill a German? And he said, "Well, not if I could see their face."
Mm.
And, he said the guy was like, wasn't sure he was fit for duty, like he would be fit for service. But most soldiers apparently, when they're trained, they they aim above the targets, and they have to be taught and forced through discipline to aim at a body. And so, I mean, we are not built to kill. It is it every time, I heard someone say, no one suffered any trauma from love. No
Mhm.
one's ever been traumatized by that, but they're
Mm.
traumatized by violence because that's not who we are. That's not part of our nature. Um, And I think that's very important too when we talk about mimetic theory. Sometimes it's as if it's a theory that humans are violent by nature.
Yeah.
But no, it's the opposite. It's that um, violence is um, an outcome of deviated desires, of misplaced desires,
Mm.
right? It's
Yeah.
not it's not inevitable. It's uh, it's a choice, actually.
Mm. Good, yeah. I think Jessica's got a long comment here. I've just kind of been, grazing over it a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit, but I think this will be a, good thing for us to discuss, as we wind up here. Jessica says, "The beginning of Defying Gravity, when Glinda criticizes Elphaba for hurting her cause forever and thinking she's clever, and Elphaba criticizing Glinda for groveling in submission and feeding her own ambition."
Mm.
Is so great. Yeah, because it feels like they're both right, but they're both only looking at the negative aspects of each other. They both want to positively influence the world, but they go about it very different ways. They both seem to get more caught up in their different strategies and lose track of their shared goals.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, how different they are at that moment. Um, Glinda commits the worst act of violence and betrayal in the whole show, but that's in the 2nd act. You haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
Um, uh, Both Glinda and Elphaba are willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their goals.
Yeah.
Elphaba's apparently more noble because she wants to save the animals, and Glinda is just, sort of a mirror of the wizard. She wants power and glory, and she'll do whatever it takes to get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's ruthless.
Yep.
Um, and so, yeah, they are both sort of back to the where the show started, where they just don't like each other. This like, I don't like these things about you, and when they that what is this feeling so sudden and new? I felt the moment I laid eyes on
Mm,
you. That
yeah.
the loathing song. There's something strangely exhilarating, as the lyric goes, about knowing that I'm right and you're wrong.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Is there any way I've seen the play a couple of times, but I forget, this, so I wanna ask the question because it doesn't really come up in the first part of the movie. But is there any way in which you can interpret Glinda as wanting to stay close to the wizard, in order to change his mind, to be nice to the wizard, in order to get him to stop scapegoating? Or is she, because she's an interesting character, because her morality is goes this way and that way, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure if there's any way of, like, interpreting what she is doing as, like, say Elphaba is trying to stop the wizard, uh, through power over and against the wizard, right?
Mhm.
Is Glinda in any way trying to stop the wizard by becoming friends with the wizard and saying, "Hey, the animals are not that bad. Maybe we could leave them alone."
Yeah, I think she thinks that, but I think she wouldn't do that if it would put her goals at risk. You
Yeah.
see?
Okay.
In
Yep.
the 2nd act opens with this song, so here's the spoiler, but you all know the music. It's Thank Goodness. Um, she says, because now she's the number 2 person in Oz, and Fiero and she are engaged, and
Mm,
she's got everything, and, she's got this Eva Peron, kinda moment where she's on the stage, and she says, "But getting your dreams, it's strange, but it seems a little well complicated.
mm,
There's kind of a sort of cost. There's a couple of things get lost. There are bridges you cross you didn't know you crossed until you crossed."
mm.
That makes me cry every time. 'Cause she is becoming aware of the choices she's made and how she's become not the kind of person she wants to be. She's becoming aware, and it's hard, and it's painful. It's
Because she's becoming aware that, there's no going back at this point for her. Is that at least the story that she's told in her mind? She can't go back. She's locked herself into this identity that she doesn't like, but
well,
she's trapped inside of it?
she's an enemy of Elphaba now, right? Because she's aligned with the wizard, and so she's in this position, and she did that in order to get Fiero.
Mm,
Remember, they were rivals for the boyfriend too.
uh,
So, because Elphaba now is an outcast in all of Oz, um, he's she thinks Fiero wouldn't want to be with her anymore. So, Glinda is very manipulative.
mm,
She's getting what she wants by being against Elphaba and aligning herself with the wizard. Um, I think she redeems herself at the end of the show, but there's a lot to redeem herself from.
uh-huh,
That's all I'm saying. I think she does because by the end, um, she the very end of the show, she says something like, I want to try to be truly good, something to that effect. Because that's her name, Glinda the Good, and she
Mm,
hasn't been good up till now. And so she ends up I don't wanna say too much of a spoiler about the end of the show for folks, but it really is beautiful the way they, um, let Glinda take responsibility
okay.
and own the things she's done and then try and, you can't bring back people who have died, but you can try not to do that again.
Well, it's interesting because at the beginning of the play slash movie, Elphaba is, almost orchestrating this song about nobody mourns the wicked and playing into Elphaba being this wicked person.
Yeah,
And
Glinda is yeah, she's
oh,
singing. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, right? Glinda's doing this, and then somebody breaks that cycle
yeah.
by asking, "Weren't you friends with her?"
Uh-huh.
And that starts this whole remembering
Yep,
that Glinda has and gets her on the track of seeing that, well, yeah, I was friends with her, and that's how the whole, like, story the truth telling, I guess,
yep,
starts, right? Is because somebody breaks that cycle by asking this question.
yep. And she then admits in public, that, "Yeah, I was friends with the Wicked Witch,
Yeah.
and she's dead,
So
and
let go ahead.
and I was friends with her, and now I really what am I singing? Don't mourn the wicked,
Mhm.
because I do mourn her death, and I
Yeah.
think that's the by the end of the show, Glinda is able to publicly admit that.
Yeah, yeah. So let's end with this subtitle. Everybody, Kenton bought 4 of
Go
these.
Kenton.
So go Kenton. It is worth buying 4 and giving them to friends. And but when good people do bad things, let's end with this question. What is if Glinda the good? Glinda now wants to be good. What does it mean to be good?
Mm. That's the ending question, Adam?
I
Now let I will just quote the Gospels and say, "No one is good but God."
Okay. All right.
How can I do that?
There we go. In your book, I have it here.
Okay,
You quote the Gospels, I'll quote Suzanne Ross.
okay, okay.
Good is not being perfect or popular. It is being honest about your feelings and open to the influence of others. It is accepting limits on your behavior and repenting of your mistakes. And evil is not who or what someone else says it is, but a failure to love.
Oh, I still agree with that.
Oh,
So,
good.
that's good.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Suzanne, for being here.
Oh,
Uh,
my pleasure.
always great to talk with you. And thank you, friends, for being here on the live show, for your comments and your questions. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you for listening there too. And if you listen on the podcast and you can rate, I would love for you to rate, review the podcast. Give me 5 stars if you can do that. I'd love that. Helps get the message out. And it would be a good, it would be a good thing for you to do,
It'll
to
be
do that. Yes, it would make you even gooder, better than you already are. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking because I'm just rambling. But friends, we will do this again next week. One question with Pastor Adam next Friday at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Cliff says thank you, and Caroline says amen. Here we are, friends.
Amen,
So
amen.
uh, thank you all, and we will do this again next week. Until then, God be with you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Adam.